no matter what you want to do, if it's a personal growth or a business growth, you have to start learning and walking a path behind someone that has done exactly what it is that you are trying to do. They seem to be happy. They seem to be at peace. They seem to truly love their business. They seem to truly love themselves. They seem to be really happy in their relationships in whatever way that looks like. They seem to be really happy where they live and whatever that looks like. Yes, it's not perfect, but they figured something out that like I want to figure out. I would start to just partner up, and whether that was a coach or a therapist or mentors or friends. So that was a big action step for me. And from that, it started to unlock a lot of things. I started to find myself surrounded by different types of women who were thinking at a higher level, who were also working on themselves. We might have not had the same origin story, but we all have those roots of guilt and fear and shame and lack of worth and all of those things that we were getting to the other side of. And so to be able to have them really helped. From a business standpoint, I started to get clear on what is my purpose and what am I really doing here? What really lights me up? How can I be of service, not only to the greater good, but really in service of myself? And I don't think that that's a selfish thing to say, because the more that I can put the mask on myself first and come from a really healthy place, the more that I'm going to be able to help someone else do that if they want to do that.
You're the real deal, Julie Solomon. We've had you on the show before, and I think what's most important is to dive into this book, because it really is the most exciting thing in the world to tell people that they can get what they want, and you actually believe it. So how the hell do we do that?
Yes, it's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day who said that she had been reading an advanced copy of the book, and she was, I don't know, she was out somewhere, and someone came up to her and she was like, "Get what you want? You're reading a book called Get What You Want? Ew. Like, why would you read something like that? Like, that's so like, forceful and like, arrogant and like, ew." And she said, she looked over and she goes, "Well, what should I be reading? Don't Get What I Want?" Like, compared to what? But I found that story
It's fascinating. Oh my God.
fascinating, because a lot of times that very example is why we can't or we don't get what we want, because we don't think that we are worthy of getting what we want. We don't think that getting what we want is possible. We don't think that we know how to get what we want. We think getting what we want is bad or wrong or arrogant or something to be ashamed of. And so I thought that was a really kind of interesting, way of like, well, this is why I wrote it. I want people, if they can stay curious and open-minded to this idea of, well, how do I get what I want? And what do I really want? And I think for a very long time, I didn't think that getting what I wanted was possible. For a very long time, I didn't know. I thought I didn't know what I wanted. So then how could I get what I want if I don't know what I want? And that was really the idea of where this came from. I feel like people write books when they have something to say, or I hope that people write books when they have something to say. And this book came about several years ago, but I think the fact that it's out as of tomorrow, which will be June 7th, and
I forgot that. That's so cool. Awesome.
Yes,
wow.
Officially out in the world. I mean, you can get it right now, but it's already being shipped to people and they've been receiving it, but it's officially out on 6/7. And I think that it's meant for this time and place. We've been living in a world and in an energy and a space that I think, from my perspective, people feel so disconnected. They feel so disembodied. They feel so disoriented and detached from themselves, from their communities, from their kids' schools, from their, religious affiliation, from whatever that may be to them. They feel so isolated and so alone. And I think now more than ever do we have to remind and remember ourselves the importance of not only striving to get what we want and activating what that is that we want, but really believing that we are worthy to get what we want, and that now is the time. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is life, literally right now. I was up in John's office like a few days ago, and it was so weird. I don't know why. We were talking about something, and out of nowhere, I just looked over at him and I said, you know that this is our life right now. Like literally right now. And we weren't even talking about, I don't even remember what we were talking about. But just, I don't know. I had this feeling to say this is our life. It's not once X, Y, and Z happens, then our life's going to begin. Like these are the days. This is life right now. And I took that moment. And so it's like, how do we not waste that? How do we get what we want if that is true?
You just said like 8 mic drops in a row, and you're right about all of those things. And this is our life. And I just want to start with where you started with what that woman said, like, what are you reading a book about getting what you want? And what's so fascinating, right, is it's so egocentric. There's no separation between me and you. There's no separation. Like we're all part of this one ocean. And so when one wave rises, it affects the whole tide. When somebody is lit up and in a state of love and compassion and abundance and energy, it affects the whole community, it affects their family, it affects the world. When one person has the courage to be vulnerable, to be excited, to be receiving, to be receptive, it affects everybody. And so for somebody to say that, what they're really doing, since everything is a hologram, is they're basically saying, who am I to get what I want? Therefore, who are you to get what you want? And you are separate from everyone else. So if you would get what you want, I'm going to co-sign that that's about scarcity, because if you got what you want, there'd be less for other people. And that is literally not the way the universe works. It just doesn't work that way. So let's unpack some of this, because you said very clearly, I think you're right, people don't believe that they can get what they want. So how do you help them understand that they can? And when you said be curious, like what's really here, how do we start to see what we really want, and how we can have it in like the most supersized way?
When people say, and I just use this from my own life experience, and then when I hold space for women and coach them, they'll come to me and they'll say, Julie, I can't get what I want. I don't know what I want. My thought is this: we always know what we want because we always know what we don't want. If we are using what it is that we don't want as that driving force and as that compass, it will lead us to more of what we do want. And I'll give you an example. I grew up with very humble beginnings. My parents both did not go to college. We did not have a lot of money growing up. My grandparents lived in a trailer, very small town. The only thing that was around me was just mere survival. If we just, my dad wore a blue collar to work every day, punched the clock. If we made just enough money to pay the bills, then we were okay. If we made just enough money to buy the milk, then we were okay. So this idea of not enough, this idea of limitation, this idea of scarcity was always part of my existence. I didn't know any different as a child. And as I grew up, that compounded into a lot of really negative behaviors and patterns. One with, how I viewed food and my body, and how, I would eat to suppress feelings of not being enough. With money, I didn't think that there was enough money to go around. Those two things were huge. A lot of codependent patterns that I would have to people please, or I would have to really abandon myself and my own truth to make sure that other people felt okay. And more so, the more that I could show up and perform and be to other people what they needed me to be and give them really great ideas and make them feel really good about themselves, then the more that I would be validated, liked, and loved. And so my worthiness was always contingent on someone else saying, Julie, you are worthy of this. And so all of this would compound into really disruptive behaviors. And as I got older and I went to college and I studied a lot, and I think also due to that scarcity mindset, I am someone who is massively relentless, which can serve me well and also serve me not very well. So I will do and grind and go, and I will outwork anyone and outwork you even more. And when you think I can, I'm going to outwork. And I mean, that's just my mentality. I go. I don't have time to be because I've got to do. And that was who I was for a very long time. And so what happened was that I was able to start a really great career. I was able to start getting respected and admired for my work, which of course, like my people pleasing heart, that just filled me up so much. I started to be seen as X, Y, and Z, which made me feel so good, all of this external validation. And I could make money, but I didn't feel worthy of the money that I was making. So what I would do is I would spend it faster than I could make it. I would go shopping. I would go, lunch with my girlfriends. I would just spend with no awareness of what I was doing. And because I was so limited, also, there was another kind of origin story that I had, that because I'm a woman from a small town, I'm not capable of managing money. There has to be some man that comes in and saves the day. And the man's going to work and balance the checkbook and pay the bills. And then I'm just going to be over here, with my cute little job, just kind of doing what I want to do. And isn't that cute? She's got a little job, but the man's over here like really taking care of stuff. And that was what was modeled to me culturally and in how I was brought up by my parents, my grandparents, etc. And then there just wasn't a lot to begin with. So it was this dichotomy of there's not enough, but when there is anything, I don't know what to do with it because I'm a financial toddler. So some fairy, godfather is going to come down from the sky and take care of me so I can just not pay attention to what I'm doing and just spend however I want. Underneath all of that was this heaping mound of shame. I had so much shame of, why am I this way? Why do I think this way? Why is it never enough? How much money do you want to make, Julie? All of it. Just all of it. Okay, well, how much is that? Well, it's just all of it. And then once I make all of that, then I'm going to make all of the more of all of that. And then once I make all of that, then I'm just going to keep making more. There was never a moment of realistic thinking as to what am I going to use this money for? How am I really seeing this as this abundant thing that can be this beautiful exchange of energy? And so I started to hide my spending because I was so ashamed of it and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I would justify and rationalize my destructive behavior. Like I would say things, well, I'm not buying Chanel purses, so it can't be that bad. Or, I'm just going and getting a coffee. Like I'm not spending it on something horrible. I'm not gambling it away, all this rationalization. And so I kept hiding and I kept hiding. And then finally, about 2.5 years of this behavior, I had racked up over $30,000 of credit card debt. My husband had no idea. I kept making up and telling myself that like some magical thing was going to happen and I would be able to pay it off before he ever knew. And then he called me one day and he said, "Hey, hun, when were you going to tell me about the credit card?" And in that moment, I was like, how do I fix this? Because I'm a fixer, like what can I come up with? And there was nothing else to come up with. I mean, it was my rock bottom financial moment of here I am and I'm dealt with this. And the thing that happened, and I remember the moment so clearly, I was sitting at my kitchen table in Toluca Lake, California, and my husband was talking and I couldn't hear what he was saying because the only thing that I could hear was, why am I so flippin' afraid to be honest? To be honest about money, to be honest about my lack of worthiness, to show myself, to be honest with myself. Why am I so afraid of my truth, of my true authentic self? And that set me on a path to essentially getting what I want. But I had to really unpack a lot of things first.
It's so good. I mean, it's so big because the most toxic thing in the world is shame. Most toxic thing. It's like, there's a place for grief. There's a way for us to honor pain. Shame is so toxic. You can't be with it. You can't witness it. You can't, it's so awful. In fact, my first trip to Nashville, I went to Onsite, which is like an hour outside of the city. And that's what we learned is like, there's no room for shame. We have to let go of it. And why it's so powerful that this is where you started the conversation. I told you guys she's the real deal. How real was that she shared that and that this is in the part of the story that tells the book, because we're all hiding something because of shame. And so for you to come out and just say that, I mean, of all the things, there's probably like 3 big things people have shame around, and money is definitely one of them. And for you to name it out loud. Type a 1 in the chat, because I already saw some of you sharing already. Type a 1 in the chat if you related to any part of that story. Yeah. And I relate. I understand that story of like, I just have to make all of it again. And I just have to make all of it again. Oh my God. So there was never enough. It was just like more. And what do I have to do to make all of it again? And it's so interesting, right? Because as you said, in order to get what you wanted, you had to be willing to be honest so you could unpack what was in the way. And that takes so much flipping courage. And the first way to do that is to let go of shame. And just by you telling the story, Jules, and I know that you know this, but I'm going to say it again, because other people are carrying things that just by you telling that story, you freed so many people who are listening right now of their own shame. So thank you, because you've already done a lot just by sharing that.
Thank you. And I feel like it's important because maybe there's someone out there that's like, this girl is freaking crazy. Like, she can't balance a checkbook. Like, what is wrong? You know, but it's like, maybe it's not money for you, but maybe it's food, you know, or maybe you're someone that tells yourself that the only way that you can go out and have a good time with your friends is if you drink. You know, or maybe it's the only way that, you know, I can be accepted or seen is if I, you know, work out 5 hours a day, or I have to drink in order to have fun, or, you know, I can never get my body the way that I want it. So who cares if I eat all these donuts? You know, food has been a big thing for me too. I remember when I was pregnant with my first son, I would drive around all of LA, which is not easy to do with traffic. And I would go to all of the donut spots and I would eat all the donuts, but then I wouldn't swallow them. I would spit them out in a bag. Because I couldn't, and I like tried to throw up throughout my life. Like, I could never be anorexic because I just love food so much. I had tried to be bulimic at times and I couldn't do that. So I would just eat things and then throw it up. And it's because it's these moments that I feel so disconnected from my body.
It's so hard to hear it. It's so heartbreaking. And like you said, there's moments in our life in all these areas. Keep going. I just have to like give you an energetic hug. It's just, it's so much. I just, my whole body just goes into like, you know, my heart races to hear that.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, you're pregnant. It's supposed to be this beautiful time in your life, but I don't physically feel great. When I look in the mirror, I'm like, woo, here she comes waddling through. And so it's like, what do? I get in my car, I go to all these donut shops and I eat to fill that void. And then I spit them out in bags. And that's like what made temporarily, it's like, it gets me that hit that I need. And this is like addictive pattern stuff that we could, you know, talk about too, but it gives me that hit that I need to feel worthy, because I wasn't able to get that within myself. And until, and I talk about this in chapter 1 of the book, your origin story. So we all have them. I've just shared with some of them of mine to you. You know, it's what are these stories from our origin, or when we're being raised, when we're coming up, that bring us into adulthood, that really shape the way that we view the world. I kind of think of them as prescription glasses that we put on. So it's like, if we take the glasses off, that's like reality, but then we have these prescription glasses and that's literally our lens of the world and our lens of reality. And we forget that we can either take the glasses off or we can change the prescription. We don't even know that that's possible. And so for me, the origin story starts to kind of unlock that. And you don't want to stay in the origin story for very long because it's very triggering and traumatizing, but it will give you the perspective that you need to start to find freedom. And that's what it did for me. And I actually found 3 tools that I started using once I started to get my own help through therapy, recovery circles, reading books. I found these 3 incredible tools to freedom that once I was able to unlock my origin story, I started to utilize these tools. And that is really what has just completely saved my life and changed my life.
Well, I can't wait to dive into those tools right now. Before we do, I want to ask you, because you talk about it in the book, how to overcome self-loathing, right? And so it's like, before we can do the work on what these tools are, it's one thing for us to name the thing that we are ashamed of, but it feels like a really big leap to make room for ourselves and love. Like when you say in the book, overcome self-loathing and feel good about who you are, it's like, well, I can name it. That would take a lot of courage, but I could say it out loud. But then for you to tell me that I have to find a way to overcome how much I hate that about myself is really hard. And I remember when I was first taking mindfulness classes at UCLA, and my teacher used to say that every single day we should have tea and invite all the parts of ourselves to join us, the parts that are brave and the parts that self-sabotage, the parts that are liars and the parts of us that are really unbelievably courageous and strong and compassionate and everything in between. And there's, again, everything's a hologram. So to the extent that you will judge yourself and not like parts of yourself, right, you're going to do that with other people. So that gets put in the water of this whole ocean. And we don't want to do that. We want to make space for other people. And the truth is that when other people tell us their flaws, we immediately love them even more. We get it. We go, oh my gosh, I understand. I have parts of me that are self-destructive. I love you anyway, right? And by the way, this is where I say, like, love is not something that's earned. It's just given. It's just a gift. Another Nashville person shared that with me in that way, which is Donald Miller. He writes about it in his book, Scary Close. And he usually writes about business. And then he also has some beautiful writing novels that he's written, but he writes about his own journey with learning to love himself and letting his wife in. And he goes, and I realized love is not earned. It's not like, well, I like this one of your qualities, but I don't like this one of your qualities. Love was just a gift, right? So how did you learn to do that so that you could then take on, you know, these tools that were helpful? And then we'll talk about what those tools were.
Yeah, it's that really is the starting point of, I didn't really believe in my own worthiness to receive that love just because I was me. I thought I had to be someone else, or I had to achieve something, or I had to perform in a certain way. And so the first thing was me becoming just aware of that thought. Like, oh, this is what I'm choosing to believe, that just me being a human being on the planet is not enough to receive love. The second thing is that I had to let it begin with me. If I really expected to give love, receive love, show love, I had to really start to love myself, and I had to start taking stock of the ways. And these are just kind of the tools that I used. And for me, I'm very tactic driven. The way that I study, the way that I see things. And so it was very kind of step by step for me. I started to actually take a journal of like the thoughts that I started having. What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about myself on a day-to-day basis? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about my family? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking about my business? Are they thoughts that are actually getting me more of what I want? Or are they thoughts that are actually keeping me in some kind of pattern or belief that isn't conducive to where I want to go? So, for example, a thought that I had was that in order to succeed, you had to suffer. And suffering is actually like this badge of honor, that if you're not suffering, then you're doing something wrong. You've got to pay to play. So that was a really interesting thought of like, oh, well, of course I'm self-sabotaging, and of course I'm hitting all these walls, and of course I'm spending more money than, spending money faster than I can make it, and then hiding it because I believe that this has to be a struggle. I believe that there has to be some kind of suffer in being worthy of that gift of love and that gift of abundance. So what could be maybe the opposite of that? That really helped me, of just kind of identifying certain thoughts about, and that, just using that as an example that I would have. And it's like, well, what if I chose to have a different thought? Like, what if it didn't have to be hard? What if it could be easy? And then what would that look like? Maybe I don't have this knee gut reaction to just go buy a lip gloss. Maybe I change the subject, or meditate, or call a friend, or go for a walk instead. Things like that were really helpful for me. It feels very manual because it is, but it's important. And again, this goes back to that idea of connecting back to your body and to your emotional well-being, and to really understanding what you're thinking and feeling on a day-to-day basis. And for someone, if you're like me, who's just like, go, 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 I had to do it. I had no other choice at that point. I had to do that. And so it was just these moments. I would carry a journal with me, or even put them in the notes app of my phone. And I would just, oh, that's an interesting, okay, I'm thinking this. What am I thinking? Why is this situation a struggle? What am I thinking about it? Oh, I'm thinking that, I'm not enough, or people in my community don't value me, or why should I create this? No one's going to care anyway. This isn't going to be successful, so why do it? What are these old stories? And then from there, I was able to start to create some new ones.
It's amazing because, first of all, it takes a tremendous amount of focused attention to do that, where you don't go unconscious, you don't go asleep, you are noticing the thought. That takes a tremendous amount of focus, and it's something we actually could do, right? It's something that we know that, like, I could take that on as a mission today, to notice what I'm thinking and to write it down. And it really is so powerful. Like, your thoughts become things. Your thoughts actually create electricity. And that is so much of, like, the heavy lifting. Like, if you can just find the awareness of, oh, I thought you have to suffer to make money. I mean, oh my God. Like, so you were a match for it. You figured it out.
I was actually being loyal to that origin story. Like,
Right.
We all have a payoff in the thoughts that we think, whether we realize it or not. And I'll give you an example. There was a woman that I coach that she always had this cough, and she could never figure out. She was like, ever since I was little, I have this cough and I can't get rid of this cough. And it's not that I'm really sick, but I'm just coughing all the time. And when we started to kind of unpack her origin story, she remembered there was a time when she was young that whenever she coughed, she got attention. So she correlated this coughing mechanism, or like hiccups, just this thing that she would do, to attention. And that was the void that she was trying to fill. And so she was like, oh my gosh, I am subconsciously doing this because my origin story told me that when I did this, I got attention. And so it's this idea of that, which is actually the first tool out of the 3, which is awareness, which we can talk about in a minute, but becoming more aware of the patterns and the behaviors and the thoughts and the feelings. And something that I also learned is that if it's hysterical, it's most likely historical. If there is that thing that just causes so much hysteria and chaos and in your life, there is most likely some kind of historical pattern that has been happening, which makes you freak out. I had to ask myself, like, what are the things that I get most dramatic and hysterical and chaos and crazy and insane about? And let's kind of just see if there's a pattern that's playing here.
Yeah.
So that was really big for me.
So awareness, huge. And then what are the other 2 pieces?
If anyone has ever gone to therapy or gone to recovery groups, they might have heard of this. I didn't invent these, but these did save my life. And so I love to share them whenever I can. They're my 3 tools to freedom, and it's awareness, acceptance, and action. The 3 A's. Awareness is just that identification. It's what we're talking about. Awareness is the identification that there is a problem or a dysfunction that exists in your life that needs to change. That's it. And in order to become aware, we have to start really taking stock of everything that we just discussed. So that's the first step. The second one is often the most challenging and uncomfortable one. Most people, including myself, want to just completely bypass this one and go straight to the third one, because it's acceptance. And acceptance can be this uncomfortable place. It's a very eye-opening place. I think of acceptance as, when we're not in acceptance, we're frozen. And what acceptance does is it thaws us out. And it allows us to really start to take stock and take ownership. It's kind of this place where we have to come to grips with the notion that there's a problem in my life that is a part of me. It's not all of me, so I don't need to shame myself for it, but it's a part of me. And it's a piece to the puzzle in my life that no longer fits. And since it no longer fits, it needs to be removed. And it is my job, and my job only, to remove that piece. It is not Cathy's responsibility, or Heather's responsibility, or Regina's responsibility, or my dad's responsibility, or my teacher's responsibility. It is mine. Therefore, I am responsible wholeheartedly for this, because this began with me, and now I can choose for it to end with me. I may not be able to control what happened to me, but now I have to get into this state of acceptance. Can I accept reality on reality's terms? Can I accept this problem, this dysfunction, this person, this place, this thing, this idea exactly as it is and nothing more.
It's so good. And the third one is also big, and I can't wait to get into it, because with that inspired action, you turned so much of your life around and then helped other people as well with all three of these pieces. So tell us about the action, and which is the action that we know is the right action.
Yeah, the action is really the plan that we have to figure out and implement to start to recover and restore and bring back some of the things that have been lost because of that dysfunction. So, for me with my dysfunction with my spending habits and lying about the debt, the action was to, well, first I had to accept, had a hard acceptance with that. And then I had to start saying, really for me, action, the question that I asked myself is, okay, this is the reality of the situation. Now, what am I going to do about it? Do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Usually I want to be happy. So that's going to give me some kind of action. Is there a tool I need to learn? Is there, a new pattern or idea I need to adopt? Do I just need more patience with something? Sometimes inaction can be an action, but it's making sure that you're aware that I am consciously choosing to do this or to not do this, so I can start to recover the things that have been lost because of the dysfunction. And those things tend to be confidence, self-esteem, balance, hope, surrender, serenity, joy, all of the things that we know that we want in life, abundance, wealth, whatever that may be for people. But we're not even going to be able to identify that and just start to bring it back in until we choose to take the action that is best suited for us. And only you can decide what that action is.
Well, then what happened with your particular journey? Like, you were in that moment with your husband. He's like, when are you going to tell me about this? And then you went on this sort of, introspective journey and quest. And then what happened? Tell them what you wound up doing.
Yeah. So my action was first to really start to work on me. So that was lots of therapy. That was recovery groups. That was reading a lot of books. That was hiring coaches, life coaches. I believe that no matter what you want to do, if it's a personal growth or a business growth, you have to start learning and walking a path behind someone that has done exactly what it is that you are trying to do. So I sought out and I looked for women who seemed to kind of have the life that I wanted to have. It's like, I know I don't live with them, but for the most part, they seem to be happy. They seem to be at peace. They seem to truly love their business. They seem to truly love themselves. They seem to be really happy in their relationships in whatever way that looks like. They seem to be really happy where they live and whatever that looks like. Yes, it's not perfect, but they figured something out that I want to figure out. So I would start to just partner up, and whether that was a coach or a therapist or mentors or friends. So that was a big action step for me. And from that, it started to unlock a lot of things. I started to find myself surrounded by different types of women who were thinking at a higher level, who were also working on themselves. We might have not had the same origin story, but we all have those roots of guilt and fear and shame and, lack of worth and all of those things that we were getting to the other side of. And so to be able to have them really helped. From a business standpoint, I started to really get clear on what is my purpose and what am I really doing here? What really lights me up? How can I be of service not only to the greater good, but really in service of myself? And I don't think that that's a selfish thing to say, because the more that I can put the mask on myself first and come from a really healthy place, the more that I'm going to be able to help someone else do that if they want to do that. Another thing for me, which was, I think, incredibly profound. This took some time, but looking back now, and this kind of goes back to my people pleasing, I had to start creating some really clear boundaries. I was not raised in a family or a home that boundaries were really reflective to me. I didn't ever have great examples of them. I didn't know what they were. I remember I was reading something once and I put the book down and I was like, I don't even know how to define a boundary. If someone asked me today, Julie, what is a boundary? I would be like, I don't know. What is a boundary? That's interesting. So I started to get really clear. And I think boundaries are also very different for other people. But what boundaries allowed me to do was not only start to love myself in such a deep, steadfast, unconditional way, but it allowed me to no longer assume the responsibility for other people's success or happiness. And that was like life-changing for me.
Yeah.
The fact that I could just express my own happiness, and that is enough. And if someone wants to tune into that, they can tune into that, but just let my experience, the way that I show up, be enough. And then maybe it gives them the hope or the idea or the strength to do the same, but it is not my responsibility to do that for them. I am not that powerful. And so admitting that, I think, was huge for me. And then it really actually allowed me to start the work that I do now. I could have never been the coach that I am now, or have the courses that I have now, or hold space for women the way that I do now, if I was sitting around assuming the responsibility of their life. It's like, I don't know, like, they could go off and like chase bunny rabbits and chop their heads off after we get off of a call. I don't know what people do all day, so it's like, I can't assume responsibility for that. I don't think anybody's chopping bunnies' heads off, but we don't know. And so just that idea of remembering, again, where I leave off and other people begin, and putting that hard line in the sand there, it freed me in ways that I would have never imagined.
Yeah. And it's amazing how powerful it is, what you said about if you were just showing up and being the happiest, best version of you, the brightest light that you can be. You were like, what a revelation. Like, that's enough. Like, that could be enough, because it shows them what's possible. And really, that's what people need, is it's to be attuned, right? And they want to attune to something that keeps us in a higher vibration, and more resonant. And I see it in myself, and I see it in you, and I see it in all the women that I have the real joy and blessing of working with. And what's fascinating is we don't give ourselves time to be in that process. It's like we have to know on day one, this is who I am, and this is what really makes me unique. It's like, well, it takes a moment, because how long have you been practicing that? So maybe you start and, you're hanging out with your friends, and you realize that you come home that night and you're like, wow, I actually said a few things that were really bold, that really are very me. Like, and I didn't worry about being judged. I just said it out loud. Or maybe I did go on Instagram and I'm starting this business, and there is something about it that feels really me, but oh my gosh, maybe then you realize there's even more that's actually really you. And you allow yourself to keep finding your way to that. And it gets to be okay that you're on that path, and continuing to make those little pivots or big pivots that keep expressing your uniqueness, and really allowing yourself, like you said, to set the boundary and not be signing off. Like, we always forget that, right? Like, when we are responsible and we think that other people, that's about us, then we're not really understanding abundance. We're not really understanding, like, everybody has access to this thing called God's life force, everyone, not just you. So like you said, you're not that powerful that you could keep somebody from alignment. You just can't. And that's their job. That's like the only job. That's like our free will, is to tune in and to get aligned. And that's going to have to be up to them. One other thing that I was like, how does she have room to talk about all these things in your book? But one of the things that you talk about in the book is how you specifically got into like pitching yourself. Yeah. And then you helped other people pitch themselves. And I think that that's really unique to you. And not that other people don't do it, but you really teach it, and you really have a specific way of looking at it. And you and I have talked about how many women you've helped to really honor how they have value. And they're like, well, I only have, 1,800 followers, and I'm, I've got red hair, I've got green hair, I look like this. And you're like, no, here's how you pitch yourself. I thought that would be fun if you share that. What's your approach to pitching? And she talks about more of this in the book, but what does it mean to pitch yourself, and to be able to even see that there's worlds where you can collaborate and get paid to be you and show up in the world? What does that even mean?
Pitch really, I think at the essence is it's how you sell something that you're offering to the world. I mean, that's essentially what a pitch is, right? You get in front of somebody and you're going to sell them on this idea, this offer, this thing that you have. The way that I really try to approach it, and this just comes from my years of being a publicist and writing so many pitches and receiving so many pitches, I like to do it from a place that is very I call it the spotlight method. It is serving, really putting the spotlight on the other person and serving them. So one of my favorite acronyms, has anyone heard of the acronym for WAIT? WAIT, WAIT. It stands for why am I talking? And it is so good. And you can use it in pitching very, very well, because what it allows you to do is to get really clear on, why am I wanting to say what I want to say right now? Why am I wanting to pick up my phone and post on Instagram or send this email or, connect on LinkedIn? Why do I want to talk right now? Is it from a place of deeper purpose and why and impact and service, or is it some kind of like self-serving, I need attention right now, or I don't feel worthy right now, or I want to get some kind of short-lived reaction or response from someone right now to fill some kind of void within me? So when I think of pitching, and the way that I help women do it in a really confident way is about staying rooted in that impact that is you. So the way that you do this is the spotlight method. It is about taking the spotlight off of you on a pitch and putting it on the other person that you're pitching. I think a lot of times, especially on social media, when we're running an online business or when we're wanting to pitch media or pitch brands or pitch companies, we forget that there's actual human beings on the other end of that with their own thoughts and challenges and fears and deadlines and, everything that they're dealing with in their life. And so the more that we can come at it from a place of, this is what I do, this is who I serve, this is why it matters. Now, and I would love to be able to support you in that. What's important to you right now and why? And really, showcasing who you are, kind of your elevator pitch, but then throwing it back on them to say, what would you find helpful right now? What is it that you're needing right now? What do you see working well? What do you see not working well? And how can I be a conduit for that? How can I be a solution provider for that? The biggest mistake I see people make when pitching is that they make it all about themselves. My name is this. This is what I do. This is what I want. This is why it's special. This is why it's amazing. This is why you should care. This is why I. And there's no room for the other person to come in with their thoughts and focuses and ideas. And the more that you can get someone, and this is like an old thing that my mom used to tell me, she was like, make them think it's their idea. It will work every time. Like if you get someone on board and do this in an authentic way, not in a salesy way, but really get them on board so they are going to have skin in the game. They're going to feel like a collaborative partner in what it is that you want to do. Not only does everybody get what they want, but it becomes way bigger than I think you could have even imagined in the beginning. And that's why I think that with so many of my students and my clients that come with pitching, they're like, oh my gosh, Julie, I just went through the course. And, and 3 hours later, I just sent a pitch and like, I've already made, $2,500 off of this pitch with this brand. And it's like, yes, because of the way that you're coming at it is this more impactful, focused way instead of me, followers, which really at the end of the day, like that's not what it's about. And so it's about taking you out of that fear-based scarcity mindset and putting you more into this collaborative, abundant mindset. Another great tool that I would leave you all with, the collaboration also leaves room for negotiating and making what you want even bigger and more impactful. So a question that you can either ask yourself or the person that you're pitching when you're trying to make what you want happen is, what would it take? That's it. Like, what would it take to do this partnership? What would it take to speak on this stage? What would it take to get this book done? What would it take to partner with you? What would it take to work with you? What would it take to do this contributing post? Most people don't ask. That's why we never get feedback. We never get information. We think pitching doesn't work because we're not asking them, what would it take to partner up? And that goes back to, well, probably what it's going to take is them feeling like there's value in what it is that you're offering. So most of the time, people don't say no to your pitch because it's too expensive or they don't have time. They say no to your pitch because they don't see the value in what it is that you're offering. So it's your job to make sure that they see that value.
And I just want to illuminate that this can really apply to anything that you are doing. And I'll give you a couple examples so that maybe it'll put some, fireworks, brainstorms in your mind. So by the way, my whole career started from pitching. I was pitching music. And so I would call every day, cold call a different ad agency. And the good news for me was like, okay, if I pick a major city like Chicago or San Francisco, there's going to be at least 10 or 20 ad agencies there. So I always had someone new to call. And so I would call them. I would call film, studios. I would call networks, TV networks. And I would always do the exact same thing, which is, what are you working on? I write music, but what story are you telling? Instead of me sending you my last record, I'm saying, well, what's the movie about? Oh, it's two sisters. Oh, you need a sister song? I'll just go write one. And they would always say, no one does this. Everyone sends us their music and says, can you use it in the movie? But you're asking the question, and I would get the thing every time. So there was that. And I said to so many of the people that I have worked with, for instance, we had this woman who she makes cakes. And so I was like, well, you want to get more work, right? You want to do more of this. This is what she loves to do. I said, let's think out of the box. Like, where are the biggest investors for this? Where are the biggest fishing holes for this, right? When I was writing music, I could sing on the subway platform, but that's not going to make me more than, like, if I'm lucky, $100 at the end of the day. But if I write something for McDonald's, like, they've got big checkbooks. I could make 80 grand writing a song for McDonald's. So same thing with her. I said, where could you make more money doing cakes? And we were talking about it. And I said, what about corporate? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what about pitching corporate that you'll come in and do a team building activity with cake decorating and cake making? And she's like, that's so good. I'm like, yeah. So you'll go on LinkedIn and you'll reach out to people who are, helping to create. There's always like a learning and development person, by the way, in corporate America, who literally their job is to find retreat stuff and speakers to come in and So she lived near Atlanta. So she reached out to Coke and like Turner and all these. She's like, you won't believe it. I'm like, no, I totally believe it. Like, now I'm making $5 grand to go in for 3 hours and make cake. I'm like, yeah. And not only that, you're going to like get more work and blah, 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 blah. So how do you do that? You pitch like what I'm saying, and I hope it's loud and clear. First of all, your abundance is not tied to who you pitch. Okay. Your abundance is a whole thing that has to do with where are you attuned? The fact that Julie wound up marrying her husband, that has nothing to do with how much she hustles. She married a guy who's both stunning to look at and has such a good heart because she's a match for it. And that's what it's with abundance as well. And if you want to build a business and you want part of your abundance to come through that because you just love your business so much and you want to make cakes or you want to coach women or you want to write music, what I'm saying is it's already done. The checkbook is already there. I made my own career. I didn't wait for somebody to hire me. I just pitched myself. And that's what I'm saying all the time. It's like, there's a thing called LinkedIn. There's a thing called Instagram. Slide into Gary V's DMs. Like, that's how D-Rock got his job following him around with a camera. He said, can I work with you? I will be with you for free for this many days. And if you like my work, you'll hire me to do anything else. Like, great, let's go. The guy now, where is he? So I don't even get it. Like, there is no shortage of ways you can pitch yourself. And what Julie's saying is, this is how you pitch yourself. You come from the angle of what do you need? What's your initiative? So it's really exciting.
Okay, Becca, you brought up such an important point. You said, I am valuable in and of itself. Each of us are valuable. So this is why this idea of pitching is blurry to me. Am I getting that right? I'll say it like this, Becca, like we just met, right? You don't know me, you don't follow me. We're just meeting now. So I could come to you and I could say, Becca, I'm really good at pitching and I know I can help you. Is that enough to get you to buy my program? Probably not. It is my job to articulate the value that I have and the results that I can give you if pitching is something that is important to you. So think about anybody that you've ever invested in with Cathy. It probably wasn't enough for just Cathy to look at you and say, I'm freaking amazing. You should join up with me. You should come in here. I'm going to change your life. Because that's true, right? She is so valuable in being that. But Cathy had to be able to articulate on the value of the result that she is promising you. And so that's what I mean with the pitch. It's not enough for us to just be valuable because it's not someone else's job to hunt that value down. It is our job to articulate that value to them and how that value is going to give them the result that they desire. And that's how you get people to happily pay you for your services. You have the right offer, you offer it to the right person, and you articulate the value that's going to give them the result that they desire.
Sarah's question is one I hear a lot, which is, how do you find your thing?
That's such a good one. I have an entire chapter on it because it's such a good one. Your thing to me is really your why. And your why is going to be different. I actually break it up into 2 chapters. I have your purpose, and then I have your passions. I think the reason why it can be hard to find your things is that a lot of us feel like that every passion that we have is our deep-rooted why purpose. And so we feel like we can't give ourselves permission to evolve and pivot and change as we grow, because every passion is a purpose. So I kind of look at it as your purpose is your why, your passions are your what, and your passions should grow and evolve as you grow and evolve. So how you find your thing is getting clear on your why. Why do you want to wake up and share your message, share your impact with the world? You know, as if your livelihood depended on it. What is that why for you? For me, like, that's freedom. That's why I do what I do every day, is freedom. You have to also make sure that your why is greater than any excuse that you would have for it, because we're always going to have these excuses of why we can't live out our why. And so that's my deep-rooted why. Now, how I found the things that activate that why, which are my passions, that was from my experience, what lit me up, what I found to be maybe interesting to test out, what people naturally came to me for. You know, people were always, I'm a connector. People would always ask me about ways to connect to people, ways to connect to ideas. And I allowed myself the permission for those things to kind of evolve and even shed away. So for example, my thing 10 years ago was publicity. I don't do publicity anymore. It doesn't mean that my why is not the same. It just means that my passion has changed. So I give myself the freedom to pivot. Now I find myself kind of doing that same why, which is the freedom to be able to share my message and my voice with the world and connect people, but I do it through podcasting and coaching and writing books and speaking on stages. I don't do it in PR anymore.
As we're wrapping up, Rachel said, I'm getting really low vibe, needy clients lately. I'm sure it's my energy. She said, how can I shift it?
Cathy said, we do kind of match up to what we think we deserve or what we think that we are worthy of. The first thing that I would ask yourself with that idea of I'm getting low vibe is, what is your expectation of how you think that they should be showing up? Like, what is making you think that it's low vibe? So I would get clear on the like, this is what I'm expecting and this is what I'm being met with. Have you made a list of like, this is your ideal, when you show up to work with a client, this is how they show up and this is how you show up? And have you gotten really clear on that energetic exchange?
No, I haven't, because I do gardens for people. So normally people are just delighted. They're like, oh, you put in these flowers. This is great. But lately I'm just getting these people that don't understand the garden and want the flowers to be 10 feet tall and are texting me day and night. And I'm like, this is really throwing me a loop, because I love this work. I want to keep doing it. My ideal client's like a mom that wants to teach her kids about the earth. And I'm getting these like grumpy old people. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with old people, but like, it's just, it's not an exchange that I'm looking for. And they're nickeling and diming every cent. And that's not what I want either.
From my experience, because I've been here before, where I'm like, why are these clients coming at me? Like, I thought I was clear. And it's like, I'm getting this low vibe. So I think also boundaries. Like, no one should be calling you every hours of the night. Like, you really holding true to your boundaries of like, this is okay, this is not okay between this relationship. Being okay to let that go. And then, dare I say, raise your prices. Believe that that's possible. So I would work on, and I know that Cathy can help you with this, like your money mindset, your abundance mindset, where your price is, and are you matching people that are expecting the sun and the moon and the stars at this rate that you can't meet them at?
It's so hard. I've been working with Cathy for a long time on like the worthiness and prices thing. So it sounds like I just have some more to do to drop into feeling like I can charge more.
You can also start to create really strong boundaries that feel good for you, that is a direct reflection of the current price point that is also going to give you a little bit of that buffer because you feel like you're being violated right now because they're overstepping boundaries, which is why you're getting that low vibe energy.
It's always a match for what we are available for, right? And so on some level, you think it's your job to take care of their stickiness, whatever the stickiness is, and it is not serving them, right? Like for them to play in that energy of like, I'm a victim and I want to be crabby and it's like, that's so not serving them. And there are tons of different fishing holes where not only by you not being available for it, would you attract a different fish, but actually those same crabby fish really kind of want to be in the energy of someone who's not available for their crabbiness. And so I've actually noticed with our community that in the last 5 years, I released that. And so we went from having Cathy, who felt I had all the same tools, right? I still had studied in Jerusalem and had all this Kabbalah to share. I still had studied at UCLA and had all this mindfulness training. I still had started this business and made multi-7 figures as like a mom and all. I had the exact same tools, but what I also had was a big old availability to hold people's stuff. And I thought it was mine to hold. And then I realized that it is really, really, really about scarcity to do that for people. And what they really want is they want to be in their highest and best. And they want it to not be tolerated that they have a story and that they're in their like scarcity. It's like, if you want the most beautiful garden, then like you really want to spend money on it. And you really want to make it so important. And you really want to like be in a space where you're collaborating with someone who you really trust enough that you don't micromanage this person and you just like call it in. And we've watched our community go from like people sharing the heaviest things, like to people being so high vibe and so clean and not even tolerating their own garbage anymore.
Yeah. So, and that's the goal, I think. You bring up such an interesting point of like the payoff. Like, what's the payoff in us thinking in that pattern? So what came up for me is like, when we start looking for those people who need us, we're always moving our vibration into a vibration of neediness. And then it's like we have nothing for them because it's never going to be enough. And I also think like you can't give your energy to someone else. You can only demonstrate your energy and your alignment to someone else. And then they can either match it or they don't. So I would be curious, Rachel, about that idea of like, is there some payoff within you? Like, does it make you feel important or worthy or special? Because I've been there of like, when people need me, that makes me feel really good. It makes me feel like I'm doing a good job. It makes me feel like I'm important. It makes me feel like I matter when someone needs me. But we can kind of falter into some codependency at that point, and that's where boundaries can get very murky. So I don't know. It could be way off base, but that's what came up for me when Cathy was reflecting.
It's not off base. Thank you.
Yeah, and the truth is that what everybody wants is to be around someone who in a very real way owns their crown, really stands in themselves. Feels really good, whether you're buying invitations from somebody who makes them, or you're going into Louis Vuitton, or you're eating at a beautiful restaurant and the restaurateur comes out with just a big old sense of integrity. It just feels so good. It's so fucking hot and sexy. No one really wants to be around someone who's like, ooh, I see where you're at. So now I can stick all my stuff on you. And then what you're really doing is saying, yeah, because what I'm kind of telling you is I love making gardens, but I also really believe in scarcity. And so I see your scarcity. I believe that my job is to help you with it because you've got no other way to get anything that you need unless I deal with your scarcity, because I've got some too. When really, holy crap, like there's a world of people who have, look at the green grass around you. There's people around you who've got acres and they're just going to say like, what's the price? Oh, here. And I'll just let me know when it's done. Right. So how do you attract that client? Because you're just like ready to be a match for that. And it's so great. It's so great. And then you just get to feel good. You get to feel really good. So it's like, how could you change this business energetically so that it sends out the most delicious, sexy, luxurious vibration. And you just get to be in that all the time. And how good is that now for your client? Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be around that. People were just asking about the pitching thing. So do you want to send them somewhere as a resource? Obviously the book, they can all go get the book. I really hope that they will get the book and they will share the book, pitchperfect.net.
There's a whole chapter on pitching in the book, which will really kind of lay a really strong foundation for anyone who's curious about that. If you want to dive deeper, that is the program. And it's actually, if you get in now, it's going to be really magical because we are revamping the entire thing in a couple of months, that you're going to get access to some things that we don't even offer right now, like weekly coaching with me on branding and pitching.
If they buy the book?
No, the course.
If they buy the course right now?
Yeah. So they're just going to get access to some new opportunities in the future that other people won't get, because we're about to completely revamp this whole experience. Wherever books or audiobooks are sold, if anyone loves an audiobook, we do have the audiobook of it. As you know, like I'm a step-by-step. So pretty much at the end of every chapter, we have like study guides for you as well. And I'm on Instagram at Jules, Juls Solomon, SOLOMON. You can pop into my DMs. I'm happy to extend the conversation there, support you in any way possible. We can talk about pitching and buy my book. Thanks. No, I'm just kidding.
They really should buy the book because it's for them.
That's a great pitch. Buy my book.
It's really not for you. It's really for them. So go buy the book. And thank you, Jules, for coming on. It was great to see you.
Thank you.
It was so fun. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.